Hey, welcome back. As you can imagine, I am a huge vibe coder, and in fact, Claude Code is probably my favorite vibe coding tool at the moment. But one of the issues with vibe coding is you're giving all of the decisions to the model to make. So for example, with Claude Code, if I ask it to create a hello world application, it's going to use things like pip, whereas I really want to be able to use UV all of the time. It's gonna not set up unit tests from the beginning. It's not gonna set up things like GitHub Actions. And therefore you end up fighting with the model in your coding experience, which is fine for vibing and absolutely what you want. But when you're trying to create things in a bit more professional way, you want to adhere to the standards that you set. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a technique that I call bootstrapping, where you can actually bootstrap a project with all the standards that you want from the beginning and guide the model using templates to be able to write the code in the way that you want. So if you've never used Claude Code before, it's actually easy to get started. You can go to anthropic.com/Claude Code, and it gives you some super simple instructions to get started. You just run npm install Anthropic AI Claude Code, and then that is really it. You're gonna have to then connect it up to your plan or to the API, and then from that point, you're sort of good to go. Once it's installed, you can just type in Claude, and then you're going to be given a sort of very sweet little terminal interface. Now, the first thing I'm going to say here is I'm going to run an empty project. And what we will do is we will create a very simple Python application using Claude Code without any templating. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get it to use one of the templates, and then you'll see the difference here. So as you can see here, I'm running in an empty directory called Claude Code record. There is nothing in that directory at the moment. So to get started, all I need to do is type in Claude, and then it's gonna bring me up the terminal interface. Now, typically if I've got an existing project, I would type in /init, and then it's gonna create me a thing called a Claude MD. And a Claude MD file is what Claude uses to basically give all your architectural styles and what the structure of the project is, etc. And so every time that you start Claude against that project, it will tell you what's going on. Now I have an empty project here, so there's really not a lot of point doing a /init. But what I am going to do is I'm going to get it to create an application very, very quickly. So if I just type something simple like create a hello world Python app, then what Claude is going to go off and do is it's going to just use its own knowledge. And this is true vibing in this sense. And it's going to offer to basically create a hello world app within your application. Now, as you can see here, it's using a tool. It's got access to my file system. It has a tool called write, where it will be able to write out that file. So you see create file, hello world, and then it's just going to create the simplest thing in the world. Now, as it goes along, and again, it's just running in a loop and it's going to ask questions, you see the sort of first thing straight away that is now going to ask for access to the bash command, and you see it wants to use Python 3 to run the command. So I'm going to say yes for a second, and then as you can see on the screen there, it's going to execute it, and it tells me it created hello world.py and it ran it. And it shows you what the output as well. But these are sort of the straight problems that I have with this straight away, which is it's not using things like UV as I would want. In fact, if I even then say create some unit tests for the app, you're going to see it's going to continue on the conversation because it has access to the context. It's going to tell me it's going to create some unit tests. And as you can see there, it didn't even use pytest as I thought it would do. It used unit tests. And this is the point of vibe coding, right? You are giving over your architectural decisions to the model, which is great. But if you want to use something like pytest and you want to use something like UV, then you really need to set these architectural decisions kind of from the beginning, and sitting fighting with Claude Code probably isn't what you want to do every time you want to create a brand new application. So this is why I think having templates and bootstrapping sort of becomes important. So I'm just, so you see it's run that, my tests have passed. So I might say migrate this to pytest. And there, as you can see, it's giving me the option, do you want to overwrite? And I'm going to say yes. And again, I can say do this for all edits during this session. And I think I will just for sort of easiness sake. And Claude Code has things like permissioning at the heart of it. But yeah, and then it's going to eventually run pytest here. Again, it's not using UV as I kind of want it to do. Okay, so I think you've got the idea of some of the frustrations that I have then when I'm using Claude Code. We just have to fight with it a little bit. But at the heart of this is this concept of tools. And actually, if you want to be able to see all of the tools that are available to Claude, you can go to Docs Anthropic, Docs, blah, blah, blah. The key thing is to click on the settings within the Claude Code page, and then you can see all of the tools that's available. And it's the very same tools that you saw there. So you see Bash, and of course, Bash requires permissioning. There's edit, there's write, which you saw running. But the key thing that we are going to be able to use for this bootstrapping is this webfetch tool. Because the key thing about webfetch is I'm going to be able to send it to a remote URL, and then it's going to be able to read those contents. And once it's read the contents of that, then it's going to be able to execute against that. So that is how we are going to run bootstrapping, is I am going to use that webfetch tool, and then I'm going to get it to go off to GitHub and then read all of the settings that I've specified in GitHub, and it can go off and do this. Now, Claude has other ways of doing this. You can set things in projects and stuff like that with your Claude MD, but I find from a bootstrapping point of view, it's quite nice just to have like what you would imagine as a vibe code templates repository, and then you can use that for any project sort of going forward. So before we do that though, if you are ever curious on what Claude is doing underneath the hood there, you can actually go to the .claude folder, which is in your home directory. And then if you ls in there, you see there's plugins, projects, etc. So if I just open this up in VS Code for a second, and then if we look under the projects, you'll see the project that I just created was Claude Code Record. So if I open that up here and then open up one of these JSON-L files for a second, you're going to see all of the commands that we were running. So if we look at the beginning here from the top, you'll see the very first command that we typed in a second ago, create a hello world Python app. And then you see that was against the user role. And then the assistant came back with a response. And it says, I'm going to create a simple hello world application for you. So when it's sitting doing all of its thinking and stuff like that, if you actually want to see the messages that went to the model, this is how you can kind of see this. And you can even see the choices that it makes. So you can see content type here is tool use. And there's that write tool that it's going to use to go and create hello world. And then you can see the command that's actually used there. So it's going and created that, written to the file. And then here's a usage of the bash tool, so Python 3 hello world. So it's gone off and done that as well. So if you are curious of what is being sent underneath the hood to the model, you can just go into the .claude folder. So let's now do the Bootstrap version of this. Let's create a new folder called Claude Code Record Bootstrap. And again, you can see this is an empty folder. And what we're now going to do is we're going to open up Claude. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to bootstrap from a file that I have up in one of my GitHub repos. So if I go to my vibe-coding templates folder, you're going to see in here, if I go into the Python folder for a second, I have a file called bootstrap.md. And this is my Python project bootstrap guide for AI agents. And you can kind of see here, it's just a sort of definition of what I want it to do. So I'm saying every Python must include project structure, source, and tests, package management with UV, testing with pytest, GitHub Actions, and workflows. And these are the sort of typical things you would write in a Claude MD anyway. And I've told it I want GitHub Actions workflows, pre-commit hooks, want it to do a Git repo initialization. It does a quick start. And then I give it detailed steps of what's going on and what the Py project looks like. The other things that it actually has as part of this is I give it guidance on how to do this configuration. So if we look at the bottom here, critical, read reference documentation. I have a file on package management, and then I tell it how it can use UV. So install UV, basic usage, how to run the commands, etc. And again, under testing, I have test coverage. I actually have another folder where I have a whole unit testing guide, for example. And then in here, I have CIC, how to set up GitHub Actions. And then I also have kind of pre-commit hooks, how you can set them up as well. And then I even have all of these templates. So I have pre-built templates for things like pre-commit coverage hooks, markdown hooks, how to do rough hooks, etc. So that's all in there as sort of templates. And from this initial sort of Bootstrap guide, I can sort of guide the project on what to use there. So let me kind of show how this is going to work. So I'm going to copy the URL for Bootstrap MD. And now what I'm going to say is create a Python hello world app using as a guide. Now, the key thing about this, as I said, it's going to use this webfetch tool. And we're going to see how this does this in a second. So it's going to say, fetch, do you want to allow Claude to fetch this content? And I'm going to say yes. And then I can say, don't ask again. Now, one of the key things about the fetch tool is that it's quite security conscious. So you have to provide it the URL that you want. And once you do that, it's able to go off and get that exact URL. And that's kind of some of the security stuff that's going on here. Now, if you think about this for a second, this is incredibly powerful because by hosting things remotely on a repo, I can have a standardized way of doing certain things, and I can direct the agents in whatever way I want. So you see here already, notice the difference. So it's saying I'm going to create this hello world app, and it's going to follow the guide. So it's already wanting to do the project structure, create the source files, create the test files, create the make file, do the get actions workflow, pre-commit configuration, etc. And this is entirely reusable. So once I've got myself to a good template, then I can use this to just start bootstrapping anything else. So this is why I'm saying this is now moving away from vibe coding, where you let the models just make decisions that you want. But what you're starting to do is curate these templates and guides so that you can have consistency across your application. And then later on, you can get your Claude MD to use the very same files and templates. And then going forward, it's going to have that consistency within the application. So you see it's going to run through all of this. It's going to take a little bit of time. But once that's done, I'm going to have a full application in the structure that I want. And I guess that's the important thing for professionalism. So I think vibe coding is amazing, but actually there comes a point where you move beyond vibe coding. And again, I know the term is context engineering, but I like this idea of vibe architecture and patterns. So I think architecture and patterns is going to be huge in this world. Alrighty, so as you can see, there is kind of stop running there for a second. I'm going to sort of scroll up to the top there just to kind of walk through what's happened. So as you can remember there, I asked it to go and create my Hello World app. And it's done a fabulous job here. So it's followed the structure that we talked about there. And you can just sort of see following it through, and it's just looping around. Key things is it is following it exactly. It's created the make file. It's created me a git ignore. It's created my GitHub actions there. It's created the pre-commits. And then if we follow this, I ran into a few problems. So it sort of just iterated around this. It wrote the README. You can see it's using UV across the board, so it's no longer using Python commands directly or pip or anything like that. Again, UV run pre-commit, so it's using my virtual environment. I told it to use rough, etc., and it's off using the rough commands there. It's using MyPy there as well, as per the documentation. It then goes and runs all of this. It ran into some white space issues. It fixed it up. It ran the code, so it got Hello World Python back. It ran all the unit tests, the lint and the formatting, and it all kind of works great. So if I now exit out of this for a second, we'll just clear this. We'll cd into Hello World app. And if I do a UV run pytest, for example, you can see it's got tests in there. It's all passed. If I do a UV run and then see whatever is in the source hello world main.py, there's my hello world hello Python. And again, if I open up VS Code for a second, very beautifully. You can see there's my GitHub actions with my test YAML. It's all created there. It's using my Pascal rough, etc. Here's my virtual environment. It's got my source file there. There's my hello world application. There's my tests, test minutes, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the make file, and here's my pre-commit config. So it's pretty much all in the way that I wanted. Now, your workflow may be completely different from mine, but that's actually not what's important here. What's actually important is being able to have standards that you can guide the agent with. So again, as I said, I think this is a pretty good way of doing this. So mine is, I've got this 5 coding templates. I will extend it over time. We'll spend a bit more time on this here. But as you can see, all the things like my common hooks, etc., how I want GitHub Actions to run is all within there. Now, the other thing that's probably important, we'll spend a little bit of time on another video here. It's worth, once you've set up your own repo with your own standards, it's worth iterating it because the model doesn't always do what you want. So it's obviously worth getting your standards in there and then just creating a new application and then try it again and see if what the model got right, what it got wrong. If it gets it wrong, go update the template and then try it again. Now, one of the tricks I often use is I get the model, so I get Claude Code to go and update my templates for me and make them better and better. So that is probably the kind of key thing. And then, of course, once it's in there, you can update your Claude MD, and then you can have that, use that to guide the model as it goes forward. I'll probably spend more time in another video on some of these templates, but I think it's probably a pretty good way of doing this. This isn't specific to Claude Code. I think this technique would apply to any other model there. The key thing is having a looped tool, so an agent that can go round and round and round, and then can have access to tools underneath there. So as you saw there, the main tools that Claude Code is using is the bash tool for being able to sort of run Python commands, run UV, etc. It's got access to its file system based tools, edit, write, etc. But in this case, the key tool that it had access to was the webfetch tool. So I thought it would be fun if we took this same sort of command, and then what we'll do is maybe run that against something like MCP CLI. Now, I'm not going to give it access to the bash tools and get it to create, but I'm going to show you if I take MCP CLI, which is a CLI for that I wrote, which is for interacting with MCP servers. You can go to Crusade UK MCP-CLI, and then if within MCP CLI, what I am going to do here, let me just open up my version, cd MCP CLI. What I'm going to do here is within my server config, I am going to use an out-of-the-box MCP server fetch. It was actually written by Anthropic, so I think the fetch command, the web fetch, is probably a variation of this anyway. So if I ran something like uvx mcp web fetch, you are going to see that it's going to download everything that we need there for a second. You see it's installed. But now if I do a uv run MCP CLI, I pass my server as fetch, which is that MCP server we just saw there. I'm going to use my provider as OpenAI, and I'm going to use GPT-5 Mini. Now, as I said, I haven't given access to the bash tool, so it's not going to be able to go create the files. But you see there, if I go to tools, you can see it's got access to the fetch tool. So let me just clear that for a second. And then what I'm now going to do is I'm not going to get it to executor. I'm just going to get it to summarize whatever is in bootstrap.md. So it's going to go and run this. And you see in MCP CLI, it's going to do a tool called fetch. I'm going to say, yes, okay, you can go and do that. It's going to go and get that file. So as you can kind of see there, if we just look at what it's done there, it's went off, it's executed the tool, etc. And then it eventually came back with the summary here. And the key thing is it's understood. Here's a concise summary of the Bootstrap MD, the required components, the quick start list, the step-by-steps, it's followed it through. It's read all of these documents as I sort of specified. So you see GPT-5 Mini has been able to handle this. And then it said, would you like me to generate a ready-use project Bootstrap file and content for a given project? So, and then produce a Py project, blah, blah, blah. So this isn't a sort of specific to Claude Code thing. I think Claude Code is so good though. So I guess if I gave MCP CLI access to the file system, for example, it would be able to go off and execute and create all of those projects there. So I really think this idea of bootstrapping and templates is really important. I think this is the next stage of architecture. And I just think this is kind of where we're going. So we're going to move from vibe coding to context engineering through vibe architecture. Probably the last thing that I would say here is obviously we've done a lot of typing in this case, but there's no reason within Claude Code why you can't do things like have agents underneath. The Claude Code has the ability to have sub-agents, or you could configure slash commands that would be able to sort of do this out of the box. So maybe we'll cover that in another video, how to do things like agents and slash commands. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful, and I will catch you on the next one.